Owen wiped grease from his hands with a rag that was already too dirty to clean anything. The spaceport was loud tonight. It was always loud. Ships coming in, cargo loaders grinding across metal floors, alien voices barking orders in a dozen different languages. Owen had worked here for 11 years and had stopped hearing most of it a long time ago. He was under the belly of a broken freighter, tightening a fuel coupling that someone had clearly never maintained in their life, when he heard it. Not a crash. Not an alarm. Just a sound. Small. What? Like something trying very hard to breathe and not quite managing it. Owen put down his wrench. He crawled out from under the freighter and stood up slowly, turning his head. The loading dock to his left was dark. A stack of cargo containers had come down sometime in the last hour. He had heard the rumble but assumed it was just a ship docking badly. It happened twice a week. Nobody ever got hurt because nobody was ever supposed to be in that section after the evening shift. He walked over anyway. The smell hit him first. Not oil or fuel. Something else. Warm and sharp like heated copper. He had smelled that before. It was blood. Owen moved faster. He found the boy between the second and third fallen container. Small. Maybe 10 years old, maybe younger. It was hard to tell with dragonkin. Their scales made them look both ancient and young at the same time. The boy had deep blue scales that caught the light of the dock lamps like broken glass. His wings, 2 of them folded tight against his back, were crushed beneath the edge of the container. His legs were twisted at angles that made Owen's stomach drop. He was breathing. Barely. Owen knelt down. He did not panic. He had learned a long time ago that panic was just noise, and noise did not help anything. He pressed 2 fingers gently to the side of the boy's neck, found a pulse, thin, fast, uneven, and then looked up and shouted into the dark dock until someone came. It took 4 minutes for the medics to arrive. Owen counted. They were a mixed team, 2 Kethran aliens in gray coats and 1 human nurse named Petra who looked like she had already worked 16 hours and was not pleased about a 17th. They moved quickly, got the boy stabilized, and loaded him onto a transport stretcher. Owen followed them to the medical bay. Nobody told him to. Nobody told him not to. The medics worked for a long time. Owen sat outside on a metal bench and waited. Through the window he could see activity, instruments, movement, low voices. He drank a cup of bad coffee from the hallway machine and did not taste it. After a while, one of the Kethran medics came out. Her name badge said something Owen could not pronounce, so he had always just nodded at her when they passed. She looked at him the way people look at someone they do not expect to understand difficult news. "The spinal column is damaged," she said. "Severely. The nerve connections near the wing joints are severed. There is no treatment available here that would repair that level of injury." She paused. For dragonkin, the wings are not simply a body part. They are identity. A dragonkin who cannot fly is considered, she searched for a word, finished. By their own culture. Owen looked at her. Is he going to die? No. His core injuries are stable. He will live. Then he's not finished, Owen said. The medic looked at him for a moment, then went back inside. Owen stayed on the bench. About an hour later, a group of dragonkin arrived at the medical bay. 6 of them, tall, broad-shouldered, their scales in shades of green and brown and deep red. Owen recognized clan markings along their necks. He had seen enough dragonkin at the spaceport to know that the older one at the front, silver-scaled and straight-backed, was the one who mattered. The elder went inside. The others waited in the hall. None of them looked at Owen. The conversation inside was short. Owen could not hear the words, but he could hear the tone, flat, final, the sound of a decision being confirmed rather than made. The elder came back out after maybe 3 minutes. He said something to the others in their own language. One of them nodded. They turned and walked back down the hallway together. Owen watched them go. He got up and went back into the medical bay. The boy, Sorvin, he had heard one of the medics use the name, was lying still on the cot. His blue scales were dull under the medical lights. His wings, wrapped in treatment bandages, lay flat beneath him. A thin monitor line blinked slow and steady on the screen above his head. The human nurse, Petra, was writing something on a data pad. She glanced up when Owen came in. His people left, Owen said. Yes, she said. Just like that. It is their way, she said, not unkindly. I don't agree with it either. Owen pulled a chair from the corner of the room. It scraped loudly across the floor. He set it beside the cot and sat down. Petra looked at him. Visiting hours are technically. I know, Owen said. She looked at him a moment longer, then went back to her data pad. She did not ask him to leave. The hours passed slowly. The spaceport never fully went quiet. There was always some engine cycling down or starting up somewhere, always distant footsteps or voices, but the medical bay had its own kind of stillness. The monitor beeped. The boy's chest rose and fell. Owen did not sleep. He sat with his elbows on his knees and his hands folded and thought about things he usually kept in the back of his mind where they were easier to ignore. He thought about small hands. About a hospital room with yellow curtains. About a problem he had started working on 5 years too late and finished 3 months after it stopped mattering. He pushed those thoughts aside. Around the 3rd hour, the boy's eyes opened. They were gold. Bright, sharp gold, the kind of color that did not look like it belonged in a dim medical room. Sorvin blinked slowly, looked at the ceiling, then turned his head and saw Owen. He did not scream. He did not move. He just looked at Owen with those gold eyes, very still, the way an animal looks at something it is not yet sure about. "You're okay," Owen said. "You're in the medical bay. You had an accident. The containers came down on you." Sorvin said nothing. "My name's Owen. I work the repair docks. I found you." Still nothing. Owen did not push. He leaned back in his chair and let the quiet sit between them. After a while Sorvin spoke. His voice was low and rough, scraping out like it hurt to use. "Where is my clan?" Owen thought about lying. He decided against it. They were here. They left. Sorvin closed his eyes. Something moved across his face, not surprise. That was the worst part. It was not surprise at all. A long silence followed. Then Sorvin opened his eyes again and looked at Owen. "I cannot fly," he said. The words came out flat like he was reading them from a list. "My wings are dead. I felt it when I woke up. I cannot feel them." He paused. "I am nothing now. You do not need to stay." Owen looked at the boy. He looked at the bandaged wings, the dull scales, the gold eyes that were trying very hard to look like they did not care about anything. He thought about walking away. It would have been easy. He had no reason to stay. The boy was stable. The medics would handle whatever came next. Owen had a freighter to finish by morning and a parts order to file and approximately zero official reason to be sitting in this chair. He stayed in the chair. "I've fixed worse," Owen said. Sorvin looked at him for a long time. He did not respond. But he did not look away either. Owen reached over to the small table beside the cot, picked up the cup of water sitting there and held it out. Sorvin stared at it. Then slowly he reached out and took it. Outside the medical bay window, a ship was powering up its engines. The sound moved through the walls like distant thunder. Owen looked out at the lights of the dock, the glow of thrusters, the slow swing of cargo cranes, the great indifferent business of a spaceport that would keep running no matter what happened inside this small quiet room. He looked back at the boy. Sorvin had fallen asleep again, the cup still loosely held in one clawed hand. His breathing was steadier now. The monitor beeped slow and even. Owen settled back in his chair. He was not going anywhere. The workshop smelled like engine oil, burnt metal, and old coffee. It was not a pretty place. The walls were covered in hanging tools, wrenches, calibration probes, wire cutters, things with no names that Owen had built himself for jobs that did not have official tools yet. A workbench ran along the entire left wall, covered in parts, diagrams, empty cups, and one small lamp that flickered sometimes but never fully died. In the corner, pushed up against the wall near the heating unit, Owen had set up a cot. It was not comfortable. But it was warm and it was safe and it was better than the medical bay, where Sorvin had spent 4 days staring at a ceiling while strangers walked past without looking at him. Owen had simply shown up on the 4th day, told Petra he was taking responsibility, signed something on a datapad, and wheeled Sorvin out in a cargo chair because the medical bay did not own a proper wheelchair and Owen had not wanted to wait for one to be ordered. Sorvin had not said anything during the move. He sat in the cargo chair with his bandaged wings folded as flat as they would go and watched the spaceport hallways pass by with those sharp gold eyes. Owen had pushed the chair and talked about nothing in particular. The freighter he had finished, the bad calibration on Dock 7's crane, the coffee machine in the east hallway that had started dispensing something that tasted like fuel. He did not expect answers. He just did not want the silence to feel heavy. The workshop felt different with another person in it. Owen noticed that immediately. It had always been his space alone, the sounds, the smells, the rhythm of it. Now there was someone else breathing in the corner. Someone watching. Sorvin watched everything. He did not talk much in those first days. He lay on the cot or sat propped against the wall and followed Owen with his eyes as Owen moved around the workshop. Not suspiciously. More like the way someone watches a complicated machine running, trying to understand the pattern of it. Owen let him watch. During the day Owen worked his regular dock shifts. In the evenings he came back to the workshop and started a different kind of work. He pulled every xenobiology file he could access through the spaceport's public database. Dragonkin anatomy, wing structure, nerve mapping, bone density charts. He printed the ones that were most useful and pinned them above the workbench. He bought 2 books with his own money from a digital archive vendor. He read them slowly, carefully, making notes in the margins in his small, cramped handwriting. The more he read, the more a specific idea began to take shape. Dragonkin wings were not like bird wings. They were not simple structures. They had their own muscle groups, their own blood supply, their own complex arrangement of joints and tendons. What connected all of that to the brain ran through a specific nerve cluster near the base of the spine, and that was exactly what had been destroyed when the cargo container came down on Sorvin. But here was the thing Owen kept coming back to. The muscles themselves were fine. He confirmed it 3 different ways using the medical scans Petra had forwarded him, quietly without being asked, which Owen appreciated. The wing muscles showed no damage. The tendons were intact. The joints had minor trauma but had already begun healing. Everything that was supposed to move the wings still existed and still worked. It just had no signal. Owen sat at his bench one evening staring at the anatomy diagram and thought about it the way he thought about broken engines. When a machine loses its signal line, you do not rebuild the engine. You reroute the signal. He picked up a pencil and started drawing. The idea was rough at first, just shapes, frames, guesses. A mechanical structure that would sit over the wings like a second skeleton. Lightweight. Jointed at the same points as the natural wing joints. And connected not to the spine but to the shoulder, where a completely different and fully undamaged set of muscle signals still lived. If the shoulder moved, the frame moved. If the frame moved, the wings moved. Not because the wings could feel anything. Because the machine could feel instead. Owen drew for 2 hours straight without stopping. He covered 4 sheets of paper. He made mistakes and crossed them out and started again. His coffee went cold without him touching it. "What is that?" He turned. Sorvin was sitting up on the cot, looking across the workshop at the papers spread over the bench. His voice was quiet, careful, like he was not sure if the question was allowed. "A bad drawing," Owen said. "For now." Sorvin was quiet for a moment. Then, "What is it a drawing of?" Owen looked at him. The boy's gold eyes were steady. Not sleepy. Alert. Owen turned the main diagram around so it faced outward and held it up. "It's a frame. Mechanical. It would attach here." He pointed to the shoulder joint on the anatomy diagram on the wall, "and here. Along the wing bones. The frame reads the signals your shoulder muscles are already sending and uses them to move the wings." Sorvin stared at it. His expression was hard to read. "Your wing muscles work," Owen said. "They just have nothing telling them what to do anymore. This would tell them. Not from your spine. From a machine." The silence stretched out. "That is not how wings work," Sorvin said finally. "No," Owen agreed, turning the drawing back around. "It's how machines work. Different thing." He heard a small sound from the direction of the cot. Not quite a response. But not dismissal either. Owen went back to drawing. The next evening Sorvin asked what the small boxes on the frame diagram were. Owen explained, signal receivers, tiny components that would read electrical impulses from muscle movement. Sorvin asked how they did that. Owen explained that too. Sorvin asked 3 more questions after that, each one sharper than the last, each one showing that he had actually understood the previous answer and was building on it. Owen answered every single one. He noticed that Sorvin never asked the same question twice. By the end of the first week Sorvin had moved from the cot to a stool at the end of the workbench. He did not touch anything. He just sat closer, watching the drawings develop, watching Owen measure and cross-reference and argue quietly with himself over joint angles. It was on a Thursday evening. Owen remembered because Thursday was when the East Dock got its supply delivery and the whole spaceport smelled like whatever had come in on the last freighter, which that week was something close to cinnamon, that the workshop door opened without a knock. A dragonkin male stood in the doorway. Silver-scaled, with the particular straightness of someone who had spent decades making sure everyone around them knew they were important. He was not Sorvin's elder, different clan markings, but he wore the look that seemed standard issue among dragonkin of a certain age and rank. The look that said he had already decided what he thought before he arrived. He looked at the workshop. He looked at the diagrams on the wall. He looked at Sorvin sitting on the stool, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite pity, more like the mild discomfort of seeing something that should have been handled already. Then he looked at Owen. "I have heard a human mechanic is attempting to restore a flight-dead dragonkin child," the elder said. His language was precise, accented, carrying the specific weight of someone who considered words beneath them but used them anyway. I came to see if the story was as foolish as it sounded. Owen did not look up from his bench. And? It is more foolish. The elder walked a few steps into the workshop, studying the anatomy diagrams with open skepticism. Wing feeling comes from the spine. You cannot recreate that with, he gestured at Owen's drawings, metal. Not trying to recreate feeling, Owen said. He finished the measurement he was taking before he looked up. Wings feeling and wings moving are two different problems. I'm only working on one of them. What wings cannot feel they cannot fly, the elder said firmly as if this settled the matter. Owen set down his measuring tool. He looked at the elder calmly. Good thing I'm not asking the wings to feel, he said. I'm asking the machine to. The elder stared at him. This was clearly not the response he had prepared for. He stood very straight and said nothing for a moment. Then he made a short sound, not agreement, not respect, something cooler than both, and walked back out of the workshop. The door closed. The workshop was quiet again. Owen picked up his measuring tool and went back to work. From the end of the bench, Sorvin was watching him. Owen did not look over. But after a moment he heard the soft sound of the boy shifting on his stool, leaning slightly forward, and then a quiet voice. Owen, Sorvin said. Yeah. Show me the signal receiver diagram again. Owen pulled the sheet across the bench toward him. They worked through the rest of the evening together, side by side, the lamp flickering once and then holding steady, the spaceport humming its usual hum outside the walls. The first prototype took 3 weeks to build. Owen worked on it every evening after his dock shifts, sometimes past midnight, sometimes until the spaceport's night cycle dimmed the corridor lights and the only sound outside was the low hum of docked ships keeping their engines warm. He measured twice, cut once, measured again, cut again. He used salvaged aluminum framing from a broken cargo drone, articulated joints from a disassembled loader arm, and signal receivers he ordered through a parts supplier who asked no questions as long as the credits cleared. When it was done, it sat on the workbench looking like something between a bird cage and a medical device. Jointed. Lightweight or so Owen had calculated. A frame that followed the shape of dragonkin wings, with attachment points at the shoulder and along the main bone lines. Sorvin looked at it for a long time without speaking. It won't hurt, Owen said. The attachments are padded. We go slow. Sorvin nodded. He had gotten better at nodding. In the first week he had barely moved at all, had held himself very still the way something holds still when it is trying not to take up space. Now he moved more freely. He asked questions. He handed Owen tools without being asked, having learned their names from watching and listening. He trusted Owen. That was the thing Owen was most careful not to break. Fitting the prototype took the better part of an evening. Owen worked gently, checking every attachment point, watching Sorvin's face for any sign of pain. Sorvin sat straight and said nothing. When the frame was fully on, Owen stepped back and looked at it. Looked right. That was always a dangerous feeling. Try to move your shoulders, Owen said. Slowly. Like you're trying to shrug. Sorvin moved his shoulders. For exactly 1 second the frame responded. The wing joints shifted. The left side lifted slightly, maybe 5 centimeters, the steel frame catching the lamplight as it moved. Then the right side dropped. Not slowly. Fast. The full weight of the frame pulled downward on the right wing and the membrane, the thin tough skin between the wing bones, caught the edge of a joint bracket at the wrong angle. Sorvin made a short sharp sound and Owen was already moving, hands up, taking the weight of the frame before it could pull further. He got it off in under a minute. There was a tear in the membrane. Small. Maybe 4 centimeters. Clean-edged, not ragged, which was the only good thing about it. Sorvin sat with his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the wall across the workshop and said nothing while Owen cleaned the wound and applied the medical sealant he had started keeping in the workshop 2 weeks ago, when he had accepted that this process was going to involve more than blueprints. I'm sorry, Owen said. It is small, Sorvin said. That's not the point. Sorvin looked at him. Is the frame broken? The weight distribution is wrong. The right joint bracket sits too low. I have to rebuild the mounting. Then rebuild it, Sorvin said simply and turned back to looking at the wall. Owen rebuilt it. The second prototype took 11 days. He fixed the weight distribution, repositioned the joint brackets, added a secondary support line along the lower wing bone to keep the frame from torquing under its own weight. He also recalibrated the signal receivers, because the first test had shown him that the original sensitivity settings were reading too much noise from surrounding muscle groups and not enough from the specific shoulder signals he needed. He was proud of the second prototype. He should not have been. They tested it on a Tuesday morning before Owen's shift started, which meant the light in the workshop was still the thin gray of early dock hours and both of them were running on not enough sleep. Owen fitted the frame carefully. Checked every point. Ran a manual signal test with his calibration probe and got clean readings all the way through. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Sorvin said. Owen activated the signal interface. What happened next was fast and loud and wrong. The receiver on the left shoulder pulled a signal it was not supposed to pull, not from the shoulder muscle but from a deeper group, an involuntary one, the kind that fires without being asked. The frame jerked. Art. Not a gentle movement but a full sudden contraction that snapped the left wing out to full extension and then slammed it back in, all in under a second. Sorvin was thrown sideways off the stool. Owen caught him before he hit the floor. Barely. He got one arm around the boy and took most of the fall himself, his elbow cracking hard against the concrete floor, the frame's edge catching him across the forearm and leaving a cut that immediately started bleeding. He got Sorvin upright. Checked him fast. No new tears, no joint damage, the boy was shaken but unhurt. Sorvin was breathing hard, his gold eyes wide, scales standing slightly raised the way dragonkin scales did when they were frightened. Owen set him carefully on the floor against the workbench and then stood up. He looked at the prototype. He looked at the cut on his arm dripping onto the concrete floor. He looked at the diagram on the wall that he had been so certain about. He looked at 3 weeks of work and 2 failed tests and a small boy sitting on the floor of his workshop because Owen had not been careful enough, had not thought it through enough, had moved too fast and trusted his own confidence more than the problem deserved. He picked up the prototype frame and set it on the bench. Then he sat down on the floor next to the workbench, put his arms on his knees and said nothing. He was done. That was what it felt like. A clean, cold feeling like a switch going off. He had tried. The idea was right but the execution was dangerous and he was a dock mechanic, not an engineer, not a doctor, not someone who should be doing this at all. He stared at the floor. Owen. He did not answer. Owen. Sorvin's voice was quiet. Not scared. Steady. Owen looked over. The boy was watching him with those gold eyes that never seemed to miss anything. The first 3 times I tried to climb after I learned to walk, Sorvin said, I fell each time. My mother said I cried so hard the neighbors came to check if something was dying. He paused. The 4th time I reached the top of the ridge behind our settlement. I could see the whole valley. Owen looked at him. You are not finished, Sorvin said. You are just at the 3rd fall. Owen opened his mouth, closed it, looked back at the floor for a moment. There was something very strange about being talked back from the edge by a 10-year-old with a torn wing membrane and a bruise forming on his left shoulder. Strange, and also, Owen was honest enough to admit it, exactly what he needed. He got up. He wrapped his forearm, cleaned the workshop floor and sat back at the bench. He did not look at the broken prototype. He pulled out a blank sheet of paper and started writing, not drawing, writing. Every problem he had identified across both tests. Every assumption he had made that turned out to be wrong. Every fix he had tried that had not been enough. Then he picked up his comm unit and called Nora. Nora was an engineer Owen had worked alongside years ago on a deep-range repair contract. She had gone on to work in prosthetic development for human veterans, people who had come back from hard places missing things they had left behind. She was sharp, direct, and completely uninterested in being told something was impossible. He explained the project. All of it. She was quiet the whole time, which with Nora meant she was paying close attention. Send me your specs, she said when he finished. All of them. Your materials list too. I'm using salvage aluminum on the frame, Owen said. That's probably part of the problem. That's definitely part of the problem, Nora said. I'm going to send you something. Microfiber alloy. We use it in full limb prosthetics for veterans. It's light enough that patients stop noticing it's there within a week. Strong enough to take real stress without torquing. I'll send the fabrication specs with it. What do I owe you? Fix the kid, she said and ended the call. The materials arrived 8 days later. Owen spent the next week rebuilding from scratch with Nora's alloy and a completely reworked signal calibration that isolated only the shoulder group and put 3 layers of safety cutoffs on the interface so that no involuntary muscle signal could ever reach the frame again. The 3rd prototype was quieter than the others. Smaller. It sat on the workbench looking almost delicate, the microfiber alloy catching light differently than the salvage aluminum had, softer, less industrial. Owen fitted it slowly. Every point. Every connection. Same as before, he said. Shoulders. Slow. Sorvin moved his shoulders. The frame moved. Both wings lifted. Not far, maybe 8 centimeters, smooth and even, the joints following the movement the way they were supposed to, the alloy bending correctly and holding correctly and doing exactly what the diagram said it would do. Then they settled back down. Sorvin and Owen were both completely silent. Neither of them moved. The lamp hummed. Somewhere outside a ship's engine cycled. Owen stared at the frame, at the wings, at the small even movement that had just happened, and felt something in his chest loosen that had been tight for weeks. Then Sorvin laughed. It came out surprised, like he had not planned it, a real laugh, bright and sudden, filling the workshop like it had been waiting to exist for a very long time. Owen looked at his face. The gold eyes were wide and lit up, and for a moment the boy looked exactly like what he was. A child, young and alive and surprised by something wonderful. Owen smiled. He turned back to the bench so Sorvin would not see how much more than that he was feeling. After a moment Sorvin said, still catching his breath from laughing, "I want to name it. The project." "Yes." He thought for a second. "Kael'thar. What does that mean?" Sorvin looked at the frame on his wings, at the small miracle of it, and said quietly, "Sky Hope." Owen nodded. He picked up his pencil and wrote it at the top of the main blueprint page, in Sorvin's careful handwriting that he had been practicing on scrap paper for the past 2 weeks. Kael'thar. They went back to work. Owen heard the news the same way he heard most things at the spaceport, through the background noise of dock chatter that he had learned to filter without trying. A Dragonkin clan vessel had docked at Bay 19. Large ship. Old markings. They were listed as a trade stop, scheduled to leave within 48 hours. He did not think much of it. Dragonkin ships passed through Kethvara regularly. He went back to his calibration work on the 4th prototype, which was coming along better than anything before it, and forgot about the docking report entirely. Sorvin heard it differently. Owen noticed the change in the boy before he understood the reason for it. Sorvin had been sitting at his end of the workbench, checking the alloy joints on the 3rd prototype frame the way Owen had taught him. Methodical, patient, one connection at a time. Then he stopped. His hands stayed on the frame, but they were not moving anymore. His eyes were fixed on the workshop door. Owen followed his gaze. The door was closed. Nothing unusual. "You all right?" Owen asked. "Which bay?" Sorvin said. Owen looked at him. "Bay 19. Why?" Sorvin set the frame down very carefully. He did not answer. Owen put his own tools down. He looked at the boy, the stillness of him, the way his scales had gone slightly flat the way they did when he was managing something difficult, and understood without needing it explained. "You don't have to see them," Owen said. "I know," Sorvin said. "And if they come here?" "I know," Sorvin said again, quieter. They went back to work. Or they tried. The workshop felt different for the rest of that afternoon, a low tension underneath everything, like a sound just below hearing. Owen worked through it. Sorvin worked through it. Neither of them talked much, which was not unusual, but the silence had a different quality now. The knock came the following morning. Owen was alone in the workshop when it happened. Sorvin was in the side room where Owen had built a proper sleeping area with an actual cot and a curtain for privacy, still asleep, because Owen had told him to rest after a long evening of fitting calibration work. Owen was at the bench with his coffee when the knock landed on the door. Not polite. Not uncertain. The knock of someone who considered the door an inconvenience. He opened it. Elder Drakmore stood in the corridor. Owen recognized him immediately, the silver scales, the straight back, the eyes that looked at everything like it was slightly below the standard they expected. 2 younger Dragonkin stood behind him, broad and silent. Drakmore looked past Owen into the workshop. "The boy," he said. "I was told he is here." "He is," Owen said. "I will speak with him." Owen considered the door. Then he stepped aside. Drakmore walked in. His 2 escorts stayed in the corridor. The elder moved through the workshop slowly, looking at the tools, the diagrams, the prototype frames on the bench, the name written at the top of the blueprint page, Kael'thar, with an expression that gave away nothing. Then the curtain to the side room moved and Sorvin came out. He had heard the voice. Of course he had. Owen saw it in his face. He had been awake, lying still, deciding something. And he had decided to come out himself rather than be fetched. Owen noted that. It was not a small thing. Sorvin stood in the middle of the workshop in his bare feet with sleep-dull scales and the exo-wing frame sitting on the hook by his cot where Owen had mounted it so it was always within reach. He was small. He looked very young. He stood straight anyway. Drakmore looked at him for a long moment. "You are alive," the elder said, and the way he said it made it sound less like relief and more like an unexpected complication. "Yes," Sorvin said. "You will return with us. The clan has." "No." The word landed in the workshop like something dropped from a height. Clean and final and irreversible. Owen watched Drakmore's face go very still in the way that powerful people's faces go still when they hear something they have not prepared for. "What did you say?" Drakmore said. "Oh, careful." "No," Sorvin said again. His voice did not shake. His hands did. Owen could see them from where he stood, trembling slightly at his sides, claws pressing into his own palms. The boy was terrified. He was saying no anyway. Something happened in Owen's chest that he did not have a clean word for. Drakmore turned from Sorvin and looked at Owen. The temperature of his gaze dropped several degrees. "You," he said. "You have done this. You have taken a clan child and taught him to stand against his own blood." His voice was controlled but the edges of it were hard. "You have no right. He does not belong to you. He does not belong here in this," a gesture at the workshop, dismissive, place of grease and broken machines. Owen said nothing. He walked to the bench. He picked up the fourth prototype, the best one, the lightest, the most precisely calibrated thing he had ever built, and held it out so Drakmore could see it clearly. The elder looked at it. His expression did not change but his eyes moved across the frame with the careful attention of someone who understood, at least partly, what he was looking at. "Come back in 3 days," Owen said. "After that, what happens is between you and him." He set the prototype back on the bench. "I won't make the choice for either of you." Drakmore looked at the frame for a moment longer. Then he looked at Sorvin. Then at Owen. He left without another word. His footsteps moved away down the corridor and the door swung shut and the workshop was quiet again. Sorvin stood in the middle of the room. He had not moved. His hands had stopped trembling. He looked at the closed door and breathed, slow, deliberate, the way Owen had seen him breathe through pain during difficult fittings. Managing himself. Putting himself back together piece by piece. Owen went to the corner and poured 2 cups of water. He handed one to Sorvin. Sorvin took it. He did not drink it. He just held it and looked at the door. "He will come back," Sorvin said. "Probably," Owen said. "And if the frame is not ready?" "It'll be ready," Owen said. Sorvin looked at him. Something moved in his gold eyes, not doubt exactly. More like the particular exhaustion of someone who has been brave for as long as they can manage and is not sure how much is left. They worked through the day. In the evening Owen made food on the small heater unit he kept in the workshop. Nothing complicated, just rice and canned protein, the kind of meal that existed to keep a person going rather than to be enjoyed. They ate at the bench surrounded by blueprints. Sorvin ate slowly and said very little. Later, when the spaceport had gone into its night cycle and the lamplight was the only warm thing in the workshop, Sorvin spoke. "Owen." "Yeah." Pause. Like the question was being chosen carefully. "Why do you keep helping me?" Owen kept his eyes on the joint calibration he was running. His hands did not stop moving. "What do you mean?" "I am not your clan," Sorvin said. "I am not your kind. You have lost work time. You have spent your own money. That elder just stood in your workshop and spoke to you badly and you did not argue with him or send me away." Another pause. "I do not understand why." Owen's hands slowed. He set the calibration probe down. He sat with the question for a moment. He was not someone who talked about himself easily. He had spent years being very good at keeping busy so that certain things stayed in the background where they were manageable. But Sorvin had asked directly and Sorvin deserved a direct answer. "I had a daughter," Owen said. The workshop was very quiet. She couldn't walk. From birth, her spine didn't form the way it should have. He stopped. Started again. She was bright. Sharper than anyone I ever knew. She used to sit in my first workshop back on my home station, and hand me tools and ask questions the same way you do. He looked at the blueprint on the bench. "I started working on something for her. A mobility frame. Different problem than yours but the same idea. Build the machine to do what the body can't." He was quiet for a moment. "She passed before I finished it. She was 8. The lamp flickered once. Help. "I finished it anyway," Owen said. 3 months after. I don't know why. I just couldn't stop." He picked up the calibration probe again, turned it in his hands without using it. "I put the finished frame in a case and I have carried it with me every posting since. Because I couldn't fix it in time for her and I needed to know, I needed to be sure, that the thing worked. That if I had just been faster, just been smarter a little sooner." He stopped. "It worked," he said simply. "The frame worked." The silence between them was different now. Not empty. Full of something that did not need to be named. Sorvin set his water cup down very carefully on the bench. He looked at Owen with those gold eyes, and for once he did not look like someone trying to be older than he was. He just looked like a boy who understood something sad and was sitting with it honestly. Her name? Sorvin asked quietly. Lily, Owen said. Sorvin nodded slowly. He looked at the prototype frame on the bench, at Kael'thar, at the thing they had built together across weeks of failed tests and cold coffee and late nights. Then we will finish this one too, Sorvin said. For her. And for me. Owen looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded and picked up his tools. They worked late into the night. The spaceport hummed around them, indifferent and constant. Inside the workshop the lamp burned steady, and two unlikely people sat side by side at a cluttered bench, building something that had no right to work and was going to anyway. Owen did not sleep the night before. He sat at the bench until the spaceport's night cycle was almost over, running checks he had already run twice, tightening connections that did not need tightening, going through every single point on the frame with a small light and a calibration probe, and the particular focused anxiety of someone who has done everything they can think of and is afraid that is still not enough. The fourth prototype was finished. It had been finished for 2 days. But finished and ready were different things in Owen's mind, and he had not been able to call it ready until now, sitting alone in the quiet workshop at 4 a.m. with the lamp burning low and the blueprint page marked Kael'thar pinned above the bench where he could see it. He looked at the frame. Lightweight microfiber alloy, jointed at every natural wing point, signal receivers calibrated to read only the shoulder muscle group, 3 layers of safety cutoffs that he had tested individually and together more times than he could count. The attachment padding was new. He had replaced it 2 days ago with a softer medical-grade material that Petra had quietly left outside the workshop door with no note. It was the best thing he had ever built. He was almost certain of that. He was also terrified of being wrong. At 5 a.m. he heard movement from behind the curtain. Then Sorvin came out. He was already dressed. Not that he wore much, Dragonkin did not layer clothing the way humans did, but he had on the fitted harness vest Owen had made to sit under the frame attachments and distribute the weight evenly across his shoulders and chest. He had put it on himself in the dark. He looked at Owen across the workshop. Today, Sorvin said. Not a question. Today, Owen said. They did not eat. Neither of them was hungry. Owen packed the frame into its carry case with the careful movements of someone handling something that mattered enormously, and Sorvin carried the calibration kit, and they walked together through the quiet early corridors of the spaceport toward the upper cargo deck. Owen had chosen the upper cargo deck for specific reasons. It was wide enough for a Dragonkin wingspan with room on all sides. It was high, sitting above the main dock level, open to the sky on 3 sides, the roof structure above it latticed and distant enough to cause no obstacle. And at this hour, on a non-delivery morning, it would be empty. It was not empty. Drakmor was there. Owen stopped in the doorway. The elder stood near the far railing with 4 clan members behind him, not the aggressive posture of the workshop visit, not a confrontation. They were standing to the side, well away from the open center of the deck, and something about the way they stood was different. Quieter. Like people who had come to witness something rather than to argue about it. Drakmor looked at Owen when he came in. He said nothing. Owen said nothing. They looked at each other for one moment and then Owen walked to the center of the deck and put the carry case down and opened it. The sky above was still dark at the edges, but the center of it was beginning to change, the deep black softening toward a deep blue, and at the horizon where the spaceport's upper decks faced east there was the first thin line of purple that meant dawn was coming. The air was cold and clean and smelled like altitude. Owen fitted the frame slowly. Every attachment point. Every connection. He talked through each one out loud, quietly, the way he always did during fittings, not for his own benefit, but because Sorvin had told him once that hearing Owen name each part made him feel like he understood what was happening to his own body. So Owen named them. Shoulder mount left. Shoulder mount right. Primary joint, first position. Signal receiver active. Safety cutoff, layer 1 confirmed. Layer 2 confirmed. Layer 3 confirmed. Sorvin stood still through all of it. His eyes were forward. His breathing was controlled. His hands were relaxed at his sides, which Owen knew by now took effort. The boy always had to actively decide to relax his hands. When the last connection was made, Owen stepped back and looked at the whole frame on the whole boy in the early morning light and felt something so large he could not name it moving through his chest. He cleared his throat. How does it feel? Sorvin rolled his shoulders carefully. The frame moved with him, fluid and even. Right, he said. It feels right. Signal check, Owen said. Sorvin moved his left shoulder forward. Left wing lifted, smooth, controlled, 8 centimeters and holding. He moved his right shoulder. Right wing matched it. He relaxed both. Both wings settled. Cling. Perfect. Exactly what the blueprint said. Owen stepped back to the edge of the deck. "Whenever you're ready," he said. "No rush." Sorvin turned to face the open sky. The purple line on the horizon had grown. The stars nearest the east were fading. The air moved gently across the deck, not wind exactly, just the breathing of a large sky waking up. Sorvin looked at the sky for a long moment. Then he jumped. His shoulders drove forward and down the way Owen had coached him, the motion that would tell the signal receivers to open the wings fully and push. The frame responded. The wings snapped open to full extension, the alloy catching the dawn light, and for one extraordinary second Sorvin was rising, actually rising, the frame working exactly as designed, the wings pushing against the air with real force. Then the left side dipped. Not a misfire. Not a mechanical failure. Overcorrection. Sorvin's shoulder signal had pushed too hard on the left, trying to compensate for the unfamiliar sensation of actual lift, and the asymmetry threw him sideways. He came down fast and hit the deck on his side, the frame taking the impact and absorbing it correctly, the safety cutoffs killing the signal instantly the way they were supposed to. Owen was running before Sorvin had stopped sliding. He reached him in seconds. Sorvin was already pushing himself upright. No injuries, the frame had done its job, the padding had held, every connection was still solid. Owen checked anyway. Both hands moving across the frame, every joint, every attachment point, every wire. All intact. All correct. Then he looked at Sorvin's face. The gold eyes were wide. The scales along the boy's neck were raised. Not pain, fear. Real fear, the kind that comes not from being hurt but from falling when you were supposed to fly, from the sudden terrible thought that maybe it is not going to work after all. Owen crouched down so he was level with the boy. "Look at me," he said. Sorvin looked at him. "Nothing broke," Owen said. "You overcorrected on the left shoulder. That is a pilot problem, not a machine problem. Tell me, what did it feel like when you were up?" Sorvin was quiet for a moment. The fear in his eyes shifted. He was going back to the feeling, retrieving it. "Like asking," he said slowly. "Like my wings are asking the machine, and the machine is answering." Owen nodded. "Good. That's exactly right. That's what it should feel like." He stood up and held out his hand. "The adjustment is small. Even pressure. Both shoulders together, same force. Don't favor the left." Sorvin took his hand and stood up. Owen made one change. One single calibration adjustment on the left signal receiver, reducing its sensitivity by 4% so that the same shoulder movement would produce a slightly smaller response, evening out the natural tendency Sorvin had shown to push harder on that side. It took 40 seconds. He stepped back. Sorvin turned to face the sky again. The horizon was full purple now, wide and deep, the kind of color that only exists for a few minutes before the sun arrives and changes everything. The dock was silent. Owen could feel the clan watching from the far railing without looking at them. He could feel the cold air on his face and the weight of every evening at the bench and every failed prototype and every moment across the last weeks that had led to this exact point on this exact morning. Sorvin jumped. The wings opened. He rose. 5 meters. The frame held. The wings beat. Once, twice, the alloy joints flexing and returning exactly as designed, the signal receivers reading the shoulder movements cleanly and translating them into force and lift without hesitation. 10 meters. He was above the deck railing now, above the level of the spaceport's upper structure, and his blue scales caught the purple dawn light and turned extraordinary colors that Owen had no names for. 20 meters. He was climbing still, banking slightly left and then correcting, finding the balance of it, learning it in real time the way only the body can learn something. Not from a diagram but from doing it, from the air itself pushing back and the wings answering and the machine doing what it had been built to do. Then Sorvin cried out. It came from somewhere deep, not a word, not a call for anything or anyone. A sound that was old and enormous and had nothing to do with the spaceport or the steel frame or the years of Dragonkin culture that had written him off as finished. It rang off the upper structure of the dock and went out into the open sky and kept going. The sound of something reclaiming what had been taken from it. Owen heard a movement to his left. He glanced over. Drakmor had dropped to one knee. The elder's head was slightly bowed, one fist against the deck, and his eyes were on the sky where Sorvin turned slow and perfect circles against the purple morning. The clan members behind him had gone very still. One of them had raised a hand to cover their own mouth. Owen looked back up at the sky. Then he sat down on the deck. Right there on the cold metal, in the middle of the cargo platform, and put his face in his hands. He was not a man who cried easily. He had not cried at the workshop bench through any of the failed prototypes or the long nights or even the evening he had told Sorvin about Lily. He had held all of it in the back of his chest where he kept things that were too large to look at directly. He could not hold it now. It came out quietly. No sound, just tears running through his fingers and dropping onto the cold deck, and his shoulders shaking once, twice, and then a long breath that released something he had been carrying for 5 years. A shadow moved over him. Then warmth. Sorvin had landed without him hearing it. The boy was beside him on the deck, and one wing, steel-framed and real and extraordinary, came around Owen's shoulders slowly and settled there. Gentle. Careful. The way Owen had been gentle and careful across every fitting, every test, every late night at the bench. Owen lowered his hands. Sorvin was looking at him. The gold eyes were bright and full, and the scales on his face were doing something Owen had not seen before, a faint luminescence like light coming from inside them. He had read that dragonkin scales did this. In moments of profound feeling. He had not expected to see it. It answered, Sorvin said quietly. The machine answered. Owen looked at him. He could not speak for a moment. He nodded instead. Above them the purple was fading to gold as the sun finally cleared the horizon, and the spaceport came slowly back to life around them, and the wings stayed warm and steady around Owen's shoulders while the morning arrived. 3 weeks after the first flight, Sorvin was in the air every morning before Owen finished his first cup of coffee. He went up at dawn, the same time they had done the first test, because he said the light was best then and the air was cleanest, and also, though he did not say this part, Owen simply knew it, because that was when it had happened for the first time, and some mornings needed to begin the same way a good thing began. Owen would stand at the upper cargo deck railing with his cup and watch. He did not say much during these morning flights. There was nothing to say. Sorvin did not need coaching anymore. He had learned to frame the way a person learns their own hands, without thinking about it, the knowledge living in the body rather than the mind. He banked left and right with clean, even pressure. He climbed and descended in controlled lines. He had even started experimenting with turns that Owen had not taught him, slow spiraling movements that he had figured out on his own by paying attention to what the air did when he moved through it differently. He was not as fast as a full dragonkin. Owen knew that. Sorvin knew that better than anyone. The frame added weight that natural wings did not carry, and there were maneuvers built into dragonkin flight that required a spinal connection no machine could fully replace. There were limits. They both understood the limits clearly. But above the spaceport in the early morning light, with his blue scales catching the sunrise and the microfiber alloy bright against the sky, Sorvin flew. That was the true thing. That was the thing that could not be argued with or qualified or taken apart. He flew. The spaceport had noticed. People who had walked past Owen's workshop for 11 years without giving him a second look now nodded at him in the corridors. A human cargo supervisor named Pete had stopped Owen one afternoon and shaken his hand without explanation and walked away. Petra from the medical bay had left a second note outside the workshop. This one Owen actually read, and it said simply, "I told you he was a good one." He was not sure if she meant Sorvin or him and decided it did not matter. The Dragonkin clan was still docked. They had extended their stay 3 times without publicly explaining why. Owen did not ask. He had a fair idea. The private conversation with Drakmore happened on a quiet afternoon 11 days after the first flight. Owen was alone in the workshop. Sorvin was with Petra for a routine check on the wing membrane tear that had healed cleanly but that Owen still wanted monitored, when a knock came at the door. Not the demanding knock from before. Measured. Almost careful. Drakmore came in alone. No escorts. He stood in the middle of the workshop and looked around at it the way he had the first time, but differently now. Not with dismissal. With something more complicated. Owen set down his tools and waited. "I came to speak without my clan present," Drakmore said. "All right," Owen said. The elder was quiet for a moment. He looked at the bench, at the Kael'thar blueprint still pinned above it, at the worn pencil marks and crossed-out measurements and Sorvin's name written in the corner in the boy's own handwriting. Then he looked at Owen directly. "I left him," Drakmore said. "When the medics told us he would not fly, I made the decision and I left him. It is our way, it has always been our way. A dragonkin who cannot fly cannot fulfill clan duties. Cannot contribute. Cannot." He paused. Something moved across his face. Not quite shame. Something older than shame. "I told myself it was practical." That emotion had no place in the decision. Owen said nothing. "I was wrong," Drakmore said. The words came out flat and clean, like something that had been decided and was now simply being delivered. Not about the tradition. About the boy. I did not look at him long enough to see what was still there. He straightened. "I am sorry. For leaving him. And for the things I said to you." Owen looked at the elder for a long moment. He thought about the night he had sat beside Sorvin's cot in the medical bay while the clan ship powered up and left. He thought about the boy's face when Owen had told him they were gone, the terrible absence of surprise in it. "I hear you," Owen said. "Apology accepted." Drakmore reached into the fold of his outer garment and produced a small flat case. He set it on the bench and pushed it toward Owen. Inside, visible through the case's clear top, were two things: a credit chip and a small circular disc of deep red material carved with dragonkin symbols. A clan mark. Owen had heard of them. Given rarely. Given to outsiders almost never. "The credit is significant," Drakmore said. "Enough to improve this workspace. Buy proper materials. Perhaps move to a larger dock." He touched the disc. "The mark is a clan honor. It means that any dragonkin who sees it will know you acted with courage for one of ours. You would be received as not clan, but close to it." Owen looked at the case. He looked at the credit chip. He picked up the disc and held it. Turned it over. The carving was precise and old-looking, the kind of craft that took a long time and was not done for unimportant reasons. Then he set the disc back in the case, closed it and pushed it back toward Drakmore. "I'll take the apology," Owen said. "That's enough." Drakmore looked at the case. Then at Owen. "The credit?" "I don't need it," Owen said simply. "I didn't build the frame for payment. Taking payment for it afterward would change what it was." The elder was quiet. He picked up the case slowly and held it at his side. Then he picked up just the disc, removed it from the case, held it out to Owen on an open palm. "Then take only this," Drakmore said. "Not as payment. As a record. So that what you did exists in dragonkin memory." Pause. "We remember longer than most." Owen took the disc. He looked at it once more and then set it on the corner of the bench next to the lamp, where it caught the light, and held it. "Thank you," he said. The day after that, a dragonkin engineer named Voss came to the workshop. He was younger than Drakmore, wide-shouldered, with dark green scales and the particular look of someone who spent most of their time thinking about how things worked. He stood in the doorway with a datapad and asked, without preamble, if he could see the exo-wing blueprints. Owen looked at him. "What for?" "There are others," Voss said. "In our clan and in others. Dragonkin who have lost wing function from injury or illness. Who were," he stopped. "Who were left behind. As Sorvin was." He held the datapad steady. "If this design can be replicated, can be improved, it should be." Owen turned to the bench. He pulled out the full blueprint set, every page from the first rough sketch to the final Kael'thar specifications, including Nora's material notes and his own calibration records and the failure reports from prototypes 1 and 2, because the failures were as important as the successes and anyone trying to build this needed to know where the edges were. He put the entire stack in Voss's hands. "There's no charge," Owen said. "Take Nora's contact information too, she's the one who sourced the alloy. She'll help if you reach out." He looked at the blueprints for a moment. "It should belong to whoever needs it." Voss looked down at the stack of papers in his arms. He looked back up at Owen. For a moment he seemed like he was going to say something formal and significant. Instead he just nodded once, deep and genuine. He left with the blueprints under his arm. Owen stood at the bench alone for a moment. He looked at the empty hook on the wall where the Kael'thar frame usually hung when Sorvin was not wearing it. He looked at the disc on the corner of the bench. He looked at the pencil marks and the coffee rings and the worn edges of the workbench that had seen 11 years of repairs. He felt, very quietly, like something that had been unfinished for a long time was finally done. The clan's formal ceremony for Sorvin was brief and private. Owen was not present. It was a clan matter and he did not belong in it. But Sorvin came back to the workshop afterward and stood in the doorway and said, "They named me Bridgewalker." Owen looked up from the bench. "What does that mean?" "One who lives between two worlds and holds them closer together." Sorvin came inside and sat on his stool at the end of the bench. "I am still of the clan. But I am also of here." He looked around the workshop, at the tools and the diagrams and the flickering lamp that never fully died. "They accept it." "Good," Owen said. "Drakmore said it was not a lesser thing," Sorvin added. "He said bridgewalkers are rare. That most dragonkin never become one because it requires," he thought for a moment, finding the right words, "losing something first, and choosing to build instead of grieve." Owen looked at him for a moment. He thought about a finished frame sitting in a case. About yellow curtains. About finishing something 3 months too late and carrying it anyway. "Smart elder," Owen said quietly. Sorvin almost smiled. He pulled the nearest schematic toward him. A new one Owen had started 2 days ago, rough and early, just shapes and questions so far. He studied it in the same way he had studied everything from the beginning, patient, careful, building understanding one piece at a time. The lamp hummed. Outside the workshop the spaceport ran its usual evening cycle. Ships came and went. The ordinary, enormous business of the universe continued without particular interest in one small workshop and the two people sitting in it. Sorvin looked up from the schematic. "What do we build next?" he asked. Owen reached over and pulled the schematic toward himself. He looked at the rough shapes on the page, the beginning of an idea that did not have a name yet, for a problem he had heard about from a dock worker last week, something involving a child on a station 3 systems over who had been born without the use of both arms. He picked up his pencil. "Whatever needs fixing," he said. Sorvin nodded and reached for his own pencil. They bent over the schematic together, side by side, the lamp steady above them, and began.